Our planet is 4.5 billion years old. In that time, wind, water, fire, and ice have carved, built, and painted landscapes so strange, so massive, and so beautiful that they almost don't feel real. Today, we're counting down the 25 greatest natural wonders on Earth, from a canyon so deep it took 6 million years to carve, to a cave filled with crystals the size of school buses. Stick around, because number one on this list isn't just beautiful, it's one of the most visited natural landmarks on the entire planet. Let's start the countdown. Number 25, legend says a giant built this. Science says a volcano did. Either way, nothing else on Earth looks quite like this. This is the Giant's Causeway on the northern coast of Northern Ireland. It's made up of roughly 40,000 interlocking basalt columns, most of them six-sided. They're packed together so precisely they look almost man-made, but they're not. They're the result of one of the most violent periods in this region's geological history. About 60 million years ago, this part of the world was being torn apart by volcanic activity as Europe and North America slowly pulled away. Massive floods of molten basalt lava poured across the landscape. As that lava cooled, it contracted and cracked in a remarkably even pattern, the same way mud cracks into hexagonal shapes as it dries. The result is tens of thousands of tightly packed stone columns, some reaching heights of up to 12 meters. But the geology is only half the story. For centuries, locals had a very different explanation, one involving a giant named Finn McCool. According to Irish legend, Finn built this causeway as a bridge to Scotland, so he could fight a rival giant. When he saw the sheer size of his opponent, Finn's wife disguised him as a baby, and when the Scottish giant saw the size of the baby, he assumed the father must be enormous and fled back to Scotland, tearing up the causeway behind him. It's a myth, but it's the reason this place carries the name it does today. Today, the Giant's Causeway is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most visited natural attractions in Northern Ireland, drawing hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. Whether you come for the geology or the folklore, standing on those stones, staring out at the Atlantic, it's easy to understand why people once believed a giant had to be responsible. Number 24. Pamukkale means cotton castle in Turkish, and once you see it, you'll understand why. These blinding white terraces are made of travertine mineral deposits left behind by warm, calcium-rich spring water that's been flowing here for thousands of years. Ancient Romans built an entire city, Hierapolis, right on top of it, believing the waters had healing powers. Today, tourists still wade through these pools that look more like a snowy mountain than a hot spring. This is Pamukkale in southwestern Turkey. Its name literally translates to Cotton Castle, and once you see the blinding white terraces stacked on top of each other, it's obvious why. But this isn't cotton, and it isn't snow, it's travertine, a form of limestone deposited by mineral-rich water flowing down the hillside. Underneath Pamukkale are natural hot springs, carrying water rich in calcium carbonate. As that warm water flows down the slope and hits the open air, it cools, and the calcium carbonate can no longer stay dissolved. It hardens into solid white travertine, layer by layer, over hundreds and thousands of years. Slowly, that buildup formed the terraced pools you see today, each one collecting a shallow, warm bath of mineral water. But Pamukkale isn't just a geological formation, it's also home to one of the ancient world's most impressive spa resorts. Around the 2nd century BC, the Greeks founded the city of Hierapolis directly above the terraces, and the Romans later expanded it into a full thermal resort city, complete with a theater, temples, and public bathhouses. Wealthy Romans traveled long distances specifically to bathe in these mineral pools, believing the waters could cure ailments ranging from arthritis to skin disease. Today, Pamukkale is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, protected to preserve both the natural terraces and the ruins of Hierapolis above them. Visitors can still walk barefoot through the shallow pools, tracing the same path bathers have walked for over 2,000 years. A rare place where geology and human history soaked into each other, quite literally, one layer at a time. Number 23. Socotra has been isolated from mainland Africa for around 6 million years. In that time, evolution went wild. A third of its plant species exist nowhere else on Earth. One example is the dragon's blood tree, an umbrella-shaped tree that bleeds a deep red sap. That sap was once used as dye in medicine. Walking through Socotra feels less like a hike and more like stepping onto another planet. Now let's go underground into a cave so colorful it looks fake, but is completely natural. If you saw this place with no context, you might guess it was concept art for a science fiction film. It's not. It's a real island, and it's been evolving in near total isolation for millions of years. Socotra sits in the Arabian Sea, closer to Somalia than to mainland Yemen, which it officially belongs to. It's part of a small archipelago that broke away from the supercontinent Gondwana roughly 6 million years ago and drifted into isolation ever since. That isolation is exactly why Socotra looks the way it does. The most famous resident of the island is the dragon's blood tree, an umbrella-shaped tree with a dense canopy that looks almost upside down. When its bark is cut, it releases a deep red sap historically used as dye, medicine, and even varnish for old violins. Legends once claimed the sap was literally dragon's blood spilled during a battle between a dragon and an elephant. But the dragon's blood tree is just one of hundreds of unique species here. Roughly a third of Socotra's plant life exists nowhere else on Earth, including bulbous bottle trees that store water in their swollen trunks and desert roses that seem to grow directly out of solid rock. Scientists often compare Socotra's biodiversity to that of the Galapagos Islands, a living laboratory of evolution shaped entirely by isolation. And it's not just the interior that's remarkable. Socotra's coastline includes some of the most untouched beaches in the region, framed by dramatic limestone cliffs and caves. Despite its beauty, the island remains one of the least visited places on Earth, largely due to its remote location and the political instability of the wider region. Socotra is a reminder that even on a planet we think we've fully mapped, isolation can still create something that feels like it belongs somewhere else entirely. Number 22, Reed Flute Cave in Guilin has been a tourist attraction for over 1,200 years. Ancient ink inscriptions from Chinese travelers still cover its walls. Inside, colorful lighting reveals stalactites, stalagmites, and stone pillars that took hundreds of thousands of years to form, drop by mineral-rich drop. The underground lake reflects the formation so perfectly it doubles the spectacle. This cave has been drawing visitors for over 1,000 years, long before anyone thought to light it up in neon colors. What they came for wasn't the lighting, it was this. Reed Flute Cave sits inside the karst hills of Guilin, in southern China, a region famous for its dramatic limestone peaks. The cave gets its name from the reeds that grow near its entrance, which locals once used to craft flutes. But it's what's inside that made this place famous. Like most limestone caves, Reed Flute Cave formed over hundreds of thousands of years, as slightly acidic water slowly dissolved the surrounding rock and dripped mineral deposits from the ceiling. Drop by drop, those minerals built stalactites hanging down, stalagmites rising up, and in some places, the two met to form solid stone pillars connecting floor to ceiling. One of the cave's most striking features is its underground lake, so still and clear that it perfectly mirrors the formations above it, essentially doubling the visual spectacle. Combined with modern colored lighting, the cave now looks almost otherworldly. Though it's worth remembering that for most of its history, visitors saw it only by torchlight. And people have been visiting for a long time. Over 70 ink inscriptions dating back more than 1,200 years to the Tang Dynasty have been found on the cave walls. Poems, travel notes, and records left behind by scholars and travelers who came to marvel at the same formations we see today. It makes Reed Flute Cave not just a geological wonder, but a historical record carved, quite literally, into stone. A cave built by water, decorated by time, and visited by travelers for over 1,000 years. Reed Flute Cave proves some wonders take patience to build and even longer to be forgotten. Number 20. Plitvice Lakes National Park has 16 terraced lakes connected by waterfalls, all glowing in shades of turquoise and green that shift depending on the mineral content, algae, and angle of the sun. It's Croatia's oldest national park, and walking its wooden boardwalks feels like walking through a painting that's somehow also alive. 16 lakes, 90 waterfalls, and water so clear and vivid that it barely looks real. This is one of the few places on Earth where the whole park seems to be flowing. Plitvice Lakes National Park in central Croatia is made up of 16 lakes arranged in a cascading chain, each one connected to the next by waterfalls, streams, and travertine barriers. It's Croatia's oldest national park and one of the oldest in all of Southeast Europe, protected since 1949. What makes Plitvice unique is how those lakes are actually connected. Over thousands of years, moss, algae, and bacteria in the water have caused calcium carbonate to build up into natural barriers called travertine. These barriers act like living dams, constantly growing and shifting, which means the shape of the lakes and waterfalls is technically still changing today, just very, very slowly. The lakes are also famous for their color, which shifts dramatically depending on the mineral content of the water, the amount of algae and organisms present, and even the angle of the sunlight. On a single visit, you can see the same lake shift from deep blue to turquoise to a pale green, all within a few hours. A network of wooden boardwalks and hiking trails winds directly through the park, often crossing right over the water, close enough to feel the spray from smaller waterfalls. It's one of the rare national parks where you don't just view the landscape from a distance, you walk straight through the middle of it. Plitvice Lakes is proof that a park doesn't need a single dramatic peak or waterfall to be unforgettable. Sometimes 16 lakes working together, quietly cascading into one another, is more than enough. Number 19. At the southern tip of South America, three granite towers pierce the sky above turquoise glacial lakes and windswept steppe. Torres del Paine is one of the most extreme hiking destinations on Earth. Winds here can exceed 130 kilometers per hour. But the payoff is a landscape of glaciers, condors, and jagged peaks that feels genuinely untouched by civilization. At the southern edge of South America, where the continent starts to run out of land, three granite towers rise straight out of the Patagonian steppe. This is one of the most extreme landscapes on Earth, and also one of the most beautiful. Torres del Paine National Park sits in Chilean Patagonia, near the southern tip of the continent. Its centerpiece is a trio of granite peaks known as the Towers, or Las Torres, rising over 2,500 meters above the surrounding plains. These towers were formed around 12 million years ago, when magma pushed up from deep within the earth but never actually broke the surface. It cooled slowly underground instead, hardening into solid granite. Over millions of years, glaciers scraped away the softer rock surrounding it, gradually exposing the harder granite core we see rising into the sky today. And glaciers are still shaping this landscape. Gray Glacier, one of the park's most famous features, regularly calves massive chunks of ice directly into Gray Lake, leaving floating icebergs drifting across water so blue it looks artificial. The color comes from finely ground rock particles called glacial flour suspended in the meltwater. But it's not just the scenery that makes this park extreme. It's the weather. Winds here can regularly exceed 130 kilometers per hour, strong enough to make hiking genuinely dangerous on exposed ridgelines. The park is also home to wildlife rarely seen elsewhere, including wild guanacos, Andean condors, and occasionally pumas. At sunrise, the granite towers briefly turn a deep red orange, a sight hikers often camp overnight just to witness. Torres del Paine is proof that some of Earth's most breathtaking places are also its harshest, and that the two often go hand in hand. Number 18. Antelope Canyon in Arizona was carved not by a river, but by flash floods, sudden, violent rushes of water that sculpted the sandstone into flowing wave-like curves over thousands of years. When sunlight beams down through the narrow openings, it creates glowing shafts of light that have made this one of the most photographed slot canyons on the planet. This canyon wasn't carved by a slow, steady river over millions of years. It was carved by violence, sudden, fast, and repeated again and again for thousands of years. Antelope Canyon is located on Navajo land near Page, Arizona, and it's actually split into two separate sections, Upper Antelope Canyon and Lower Antelope Canyon. Both are examples of what geologists call a slot canyon, narrow, deep passageways cut through solid sandstone. Unlike canyons carved slowly by a constant river, Antelope Canyon was shaped primarily by flash floods. During monsoon season, sudden and intense rainstorms send fast-moving water rushing through this narrow channel. The water picks up sand and debris that acts like sandpaper, grinding against the canyon walls. Over thousands of years, that repeated erosion smoothed the sandstone into the flowing wave-like curves the canyon is famous for. Those same curves are what create the canyon's most famous feature, light beams. Around midday, when the sun is nearly directly overhead, Sunlight is able to reach down through narrow openings at the top of the canyon and beam directly onto the canyon floor. The smooth, curved walls scatter and reflect that light, creating glowing shafts that seem to hang in the air, especially when dust or sand particles are drifting through them. That same flash flood process that creates the canyon's beauty also makes it genuinely dangerous. Flash floods can occur even when it isn't raining directly overhead if a storm hits miles away and sends water rushing downstream. It's why the canyon can only be visited with an authorized Navajo guide, both to protect visitors and to preserve the sacred nature of the land. Antelope Canyon is a reminder that sometimes nature's most delicate, beautiful details come from its most violent processes, carved not gently, but in bursts, one flash flood at a time. Number 17. During the last ice age, massive glaciers carved deep valleys into Norway's coastline. When the ice melted, the sea rushed in, creating the fjords, steep-walled inlets that plunge over 1,000 meters deep in some places. Geiranger Fjord alone has waterfalls with names like the Seven Sisters, cascading straight into the dark blue water below. This isn't a canyon, and it isn't a lake. It's something in between. A valley carved by ice and then drowned by the sea. Norway's coastline is famous for its fjords. Long, narrow inlets with steep cliffs on either side, cutting deep into the mainland. There are more than 1,000 of them along Norway's coast, but a handful like Geiranger Fjord and Narøy Fjord have become world famous for their scale and beauty. Fjords are a direct result of the last ice age. Roughly 11,000 years ago, massive glaciers moved slowly across this landscape, grinding through solid rock and carving deep U-shaped valleys as they advanced toward the sea. When the ice eventually melted and retreated, sea levels rose and ocean water flooded into these newly carved valleys, creating the fjords we see today. Because they were carved by glaciers rather than rivers, fjords tend to be dramatically deep. Some plunge over 1,000 meters below sea level, deeper in places than the surrounding ocean floor just offshore. Sognefjord, Norway's longest and deepest fjord, stretches over 200 kilometers inland and reaches depths of more than 1,300 meters. Geiranger Fjord is perhaps the most photographed of them all, thanks in part to a series of waterfalls with names like the Seven Sisters, which cascade directly down sheer cliff faces into the fjord below. Small, isolated farms still cling to ledges along the cliffside, remnants of a time when this remote terrain was the only home some families ever knew. The fjords are a reminder of just how much power ice can hold. Powerful enough to carve valleys 1,000 meters deep, and patient enough to let the sea quietly fill in the rest. Number 16. If these quartz sandstone pillars look familiar, it's because they inspired the floating Hallelujah Mountains in the movie Avatar. Some of these towers rise over 200 meters straight up, formed over millions of years of erosion. On misty mornings, the pillars seem to float above the clouds entirely. You've probably already seen this landscape, even if you've never heard its name, because a movie studio saw it first and turned it into an alien planet. This is Zhangjiajie National Forest Park in China's Hunan province, home to thousands of narrow, towering sandstone pillars, some rising more than 200 meters straight into the air. It was China's first officially designated national forest park, and it remains one of the most surreal landscapes in the country. These pillars are made of quartz sandstone. They formed over roughly 380 million years as ancient seabeds compressed into solid rock. Tectonic uplift pushed the strata upward, and then water, wind, and freeze-thaw cycles slowly eroded them. Erosion removed weaker sections, leaving the hardest columns standing like an isolated stone forest. If the landscape looks familiar, it's because director James Cameron used Zhangjiajie's pillars as visual inspiration for the floating Hallelujah Mountains in Avatar. The connection became so well known that one of the park's most famous pillars was officially renamed the Avatar Hallelujah Mountain in 2010, drawing even more visitors eager to see the real-world version of the fictional planet Pandora. On misty mornings, which are common in this humid region, low-hanging clouds settle between the pillars, hiding their bases completely and leaving only their peaks visible above the fog. In these conditions, the pillars genuinely appear to be floating, the exact effect that made this landscape so irresistible to filmmakers. Part 3 is where things get seriously massive, including a salt flat so flat it's used to calibrate satellites in space. Let's keep going. Number 14. Nearly 2,000 limestone islands rise from the emerald waters of Ha Long Bay, each one shaped by millions of years of erosion. Local legend says dragons descended into the sea here, and their thrashing tails carved out the bay. The real explanation, tectonic uplift and limestone dissolution, is almost as dramatic. Nearly 2,000 islands, one bay, and a legend involving dragons that, for once, almost makes as much sense as the science. Ha Long Bay sits along Vietnam's northeastern coast, and it's home to an estimated 1,600 to 2,000 limestone islands and islets, most of them uninhabited, rising dramatically out of calm jade-green water. It's one of Vietnam's most visited natural landmarks and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Geologically, this is what's known as a karst landscape, formed over roughly 500 million years as thick layers of limestone were deposited, then later uplifted by tectonic activity and exposed to millions of years of rain, wind, and seawater. That erosion slowly dissolved the softer limestone, carving out caves, arches, and steep-sided towers, while rising sea levels eventually flooded the surrounding lowlands, isolating each tower as its own individual island. The name Ha Long translates to descending dragon, and it comes from a local legend that a family of dragons was sent by the gods to help defend Vietnam from invaders, spitting out jewels and jade that turned into these islands as they crashed into the sea, forming a natural barrier along the coast. According to the story, the dragons decided to stay, submerging themselves in the bay, which locals say still explains the bay's calm, sheltered waters today. Many of the islands hide caves and hidden lagoons only accessible by boat or kayak, including Sung Sot Cave, nicknamed the Surprise Cave, one of the largest and most spectacular cave systems in the entire bay. Some lagoons are entirely enclosed, reachable only by swimming or paddling through narrow, low-ceiling tunnels carved directly through the rock. Whether you believe it was carved by dragons or by 500 million years of geology, Ha Long Bay remains one of the most otherworldly coastlines on Earth, proof that sometimes the myth and the science tell almost the same story. Number 13. The world's largest salt flat spans over 10,000 square kilometers. During the rainy season, a thin layer of water transforms it into the largest natural mirror on Earth, reflecting the sky so perfectly that the horizon disappears. NASA even uses this flat reflective surface to calibrate satellites orbiting the planet. There's a place on Earth where, for a few months each year, it becomes almost impossible to tell where the ground ends and the sky begins. This is Salar de Uyuni, high in the Bolivian Andes, and it's the largest salt flat on the planet, covering more than 10,000 square kilometers, an area larger than the country of Lebanon. From above, it looks almost perfectly flat and white, stretching to the horizon in every direction. Salar de Uyuni formed roughly 30,000 to 40,000 years ago, when a massive prehistoric lake in this basin slowly evaporated, leaving behind thick layers of salt and mineral deposits. Today, that dried-out lakebed contains an estimated 10 billion tons of salt, and beneath the surface lies more than half of the world's known lithium reserves, a mineral critical to modern batteries. During the rainy season, typically between December and April, the salt flat is transformed. A thin layer of water settles across the flat surface, creating a glassy coating. Because the ground is so perfectly level, the water does not form puddles but spreads evenly for miles. The result is the largest natural mirror on Earth, reflecting clouds, mountains, and stars with almost no distortion. That flatness, combined with the total lack of reference points on the horizon, has made Salar de Uyuni one of the most popular places on Earth for forced perspective photography, where travelers use the featureless background to create playful optical illusions. It's also precise enough that NASA and other space agencies use the flat, smooth, reflective surface to calibrate and test satellite instruments from orbit. Salar de Uyuni is proof that sometimes the most surreal landscapes on Earth aren't built from mountains or forests, but from something as simple as salt, water, and a perfectly flat horizon. Number 12. Lake Baikal is the deepest and oldest freshwater lake on Earth, over 25 million years old and plunging more than 1,600 meters down. It holds nearly 20% of the entire world's unfrozen fresh water. In winter, the surface freezes into crystal clear ice, so transparent you can see meters down into the frozen depths. This isn't glass, it's ice. And it's so clear, in some places, you can see nearly 10 meters straight down into freezing water below. This is Lake Baikal in southern Siberia, and by nearly every measure, it's one of the most extreme lakes on Earth. It's the deepest lake in the world, plunging more than 1,600 meters at its lowest point, and it's also the oldest, having formed over roughly 25 to 30 million years ago, likely as a result of a slowly widening continental rift. Despite covering a relatively modest surface area, Baikal's extreme depth means it holds an enormous volume of water, an estimated 20% of all the unfrozen fresh water on the entire planet. That's more water than all 5 of North America's Great Lakes combined. Each winter, Baikal's surface freezes over almost completely, and in certain conditions, that ice forms with remarkable clarity. Clear enough to see straight down into the water below, along with dramatic natural cracks and frozen air bubbles trapped mid-rise. Strong winds sometimes shape the ice into towering wind-carved formations along the shoreline. Because the lake has been isolated for so many millions of years, it's developed extraordinary biodiversity, with an estimated 80% of its animal species found nowhere else on Earth. That includes the Baikal seal, or Nerpa, the only entirely freshwater seal species in the world, and something of a scientific mystery, since no one is entirely certain how seals reach this landlocked lake in the first place. Lake Baikal is a reminder that age and isolation can build something extraordinary. A lake so old, so deep, and so distinct that it's practically its own separate world. Number 11. Yellowstone sits on top of one of the largest active volcanic systems in the world. Beneath its geysers, hot springs, and rainbow-colored bacterial mats lies a supervolcano. The same one responsible for the park's famous geothermal features, including Old Faithful, which has erupted predictably for well over a century. Yellowstone, established in 1872, was the world's first officially designated national park. It spans nearly 9,000 square kilometers across Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, and it's home to more geysers and hot springs than anywhere else on Earth, over 10,000 hydrothermal features in total. All of that geothermal activity exists because Yellowstone sits directly above a supervolcano, a massive underground chamber of magma, part of what's known as the Yellowstone hotspot. This same hotspot has fueled several enormous volcanic eruptions over the past 2 million years, the most recent of which, about 640,000 years ago, created the massive caldera that much of the park now sits inside. That underground heat is what powers features like Old Faithful, one of the most predictable geysers in the world, erupting roughly every 60 to 110 minutes, sending boiling water up to 55 meters into the air. Groundwater seeps down toward the magma below, gets superheated under pressure, and eventually forces its way back up through narrow underground channels. Some of the park's hot springs, like the Grand Prismatic Spring, display stunning rings of color, caused by heat-loving bacteria called thermophiles that thrive at different temperatures across the pool, each producing a different pigment. It's one of the only places on Earth where you can see a rainbow of color created almost entirely by living microorganisms. Number 10. Uluru is one giant sandstone monolith rising 348 meters from the flat Australian outback. It is sacred to the Anangu people, its traditional owners who have lived here for tens of thousands of years. At sunset, the rock appears to change color, glowing deep red, orange, and purple as the light shifts. This phenomenon draws visitors from every corner of the globe. In the middle of one of the flattest, most remote landscapes on Earth, a single rock rises 348 meters into the sky. And for tens of thousands of years, it's meant far more than just a landmark. Uluru sits in the heart of Australia's Northern Territory, roughly 450 kilometers from the nearest major town. It's a single massive sandstone monolith, and what makes it so visually striking is exactly that. It stands almost entirely alone, with no surrounding mountain range to compare it to. Uluru began forming around 550 million years ago, as sediment eroded from ancient mountains and settled into a basin, eventually compacting into solid sandstone. Tectonic activity later tilted the rock layers almost vertically, and millions of years of erosion wore away the softer surrounding rock, leaving Uluru standing as the exposed, resistant remnant. Remarkably, what we see above ground is only a small fraction of the formation. Most of it extends several kilometers further underground. Uluru's most famous feature is the way it changes color throughout the day. Its surface is rich in iron, and as the angle of sunlight shifts, particularly at sunrise and sunset, that iron-rich rock appears to glow, shifting through shades of orange, deep red, and even violet purple in certain conditions. For the Anangu people, the traditional owners of this land, Uluru is far more than a geological formation. It's a deeply sacred site central to their cultural and spiritual traditions, with specific areas considered too sacred to photograph or approach closely. For decades, tourists were permitted to climb the rock despite the Anangu's request not to, until in October 2019, following years of advocacy, climbing Uluru was officially banned. Uluru is a reminder that not every natural wonder exists simply to be climbed or conquered. Some are meant to be witnessed, respected, and left exactly as they are. Number 9. Iguazu Falls isn't one waterfall. It's roughly 275 individual falls spread across nearly 3 kilometers, straddling the border of Argentina and Brazil. At its center, the horseshoe-shaped Devil's Throat plunges water down with such force that mist clouds rise hundreds of meters into the air, visible from miles away. This isn't one waterfall. It's roughly 275 of them, working together, spread across a curve of jungle nearly 3 kilometers wide. Iguazu Falls sits directly on the border between Argentina and Brazil, fed by the Iguazu River as it winds through subtropical rainforest before suddenly plunging over a massive basalt cliff. The falls are split roughly 80% on the Argentine side and 20% on the Brazilian side, and each country offers a completely different perspective of the same natural wonder. The falls exist because of a massive basalt plateau formed by volcanic activity roughly 130 million years ago. As the Iguazu River approaches the edge of this plateau, it drops suddenly over the exposed basalt cliff face, in some sections falling as far as 82 meters, significantly taller than Niagara Falls and considerably wider overall. At the heart of the falls lies its most dramatic section, a horseshoe-shaped chasm known as the Devil's Throat, or Garganta del Diablo. Here, roughly half of the entire river's volume plunges into a single narrow gorge, generating a constant, thunderous roar and sending mist hundreds of meters into the air, visible from miles away, even before you can see the falls themselves. The falls are surrounded by dense subtropical rainforest, home to an extraordinary range of wildlife, including toucans, coyotes, and hundreds of species of butterflies that gather in colorful clusters near the mist. Both the Argentine and Brazilian sides of the falls are protected as national parks and UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Eleanor Roosevelt is said to have looked at Iguazu Falls and remarked, "Poor Niagara." Standing in front of 275 waterfalls thundering in unison, it's easy to understand exactly what she meant. The Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize looks like a perfect dark circle punched into the turquoise Caribbean Sea. In this video, we explore how this giant underwater sinkhole formed during past ice ages. We also explain why it's considered one of the greatest scuba diving sites on Earth. And we reveal what famed explorer Jacques Cousteau discovered when he investigated it decades ago. From above, it looks almost too perfect. A dark circle punched cleanly into a bright turquoise sea. It wasn't punched. It collapsed. The Great Blue Hole sits roughly 70 kilometers off the coast of Belize, near the center of Lighthouse Reef, part of the larger Belize Barrier Reef system. From the surface, it measures over 300 meters wide and plunges more than 124 meters deep. A massive, near perfectly circular void in the middle of otherwise shallow coral-covered water. The Blue Hole wasn't always underwater. During past ice ages, when sea levels were significantly lower, this area was dry land, home to a network of limestone caves, much like many cave systems found around the world today. As those ice ages ended and sea levels rose, ocean water gradually flooded the caves. At some point, the weight became too much and the cave's ceiling collapsed entirely, leaving behind the massive circular sinkhole visible today. Divers exploring the Blue Hole can still see remnants of its cave origins, including massive stalactites hanging from what were once cave ceilings, now submerged tens of meters below the surface. Clear evidence that this area was once completely dry. In 1971, famed ocean explorer Jacques Cousteau brought his research vessel Calypso to the Blue Hole and declared it one of the top diving sites in the world, helping bring international attention to this remote reef. Today, it remains a bucket list destination for experienced divers who descend past the coral rim into darker, cooler water to explore the cave formations below. The Great Blue Hole is a reminder that some of the ocean's most striking features aren't built by the sea at all. They're inherited from a time when the sea wasn't even there. Number 7. Charged particles from the sun collide with Earth's atmosphere, and the result is one of the most breathtaking light shows in existence. The aurora borealis paints the night sky in shifting curtains of green, purple, and pink, visible near the Arctic Circle in countries like Norway, Iceland, and Canada. No two auroras ever look exactly the same. The aurora borealis, or northern lights, is one of the most breathtaking natural phenomena on Earth. Shifting curtains of green, purple, and pink light dancing across the night sky. In this video, we break down the science behind how the auroras form, why they only appear near the poles, and where in the world you have the best chance of seeing them. This light show starts 150 million kilometers away on the surface of the sun, and by the time it reaches you, it's traveled through space for days before finally colliding with the sky above your head. The aurora borealis, or northern lights, is caused by the sun. Constantly, our sun releases a stream of charged particles called solar wind. When that solar wind reaches Earth, most of it is deflected by our planet's magnetic field, but near the north and south poles, that magnetic field actually funnels some of those particles down into the atmosphere instead. As those charged particles collide with gases in Earth's atmosphere, mainly oxygen and nitrogen, they release energy in the form of light. Oxygen tends to produce green and red light, while nitrogen produces blue and purple hues, which is why auroras often shift between multiple colors, sometimes within the same display. This is also why no two auroras ever look exactly the same. The shape, intensity, and movement depend on constantly shifting solar activity, and the display can range from a faint green glow to dramatic, rippling curtains of light that move visibly across the sky in real time. Because this phenomenon depends on Earth's magnetic field, auroras are almost always visible only near the poles, inside a region scientists call the auroral oval. This includes countries like Norway, Iceland, Finland, Canada, and Alaska. A similar phenomenon called the aurora australis, or southern lights, occurs near Antarctica, though it's far less frequently observed due to how remote that region is. The northern lights are proof that some of Earth's most beautiful moments don't even originate on Earth at all. They start on the sun and end up painting our sky. Number 6. Locally known as the smoke that thunders, Victoria Falls is the largest single sheet of falling water on Earth, 1.7 kilometers wide and dropping over 100 meters into the gorge below. The spray can be seen from over 20 kilometers away. The roar is loud enough to drown out conversation even at a distance. We explore how the falls formed, why they're considered one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, and what makes the Devil's Pool one of the most nerve-wracking swims on the planet. Long before explorers ever gave this place a name, locals already had one. And it wasn't about beauty, it was about sound. Victoria Falls sits on the Zambezi River, along the border of Zambia and Zimbabwe, and it holds a rare distinction. It's the largest single sheet of falling water on Earth, measuring 1.7 kilometers wide and dropping over 100 meters into the gorge below. Locally, it's known as Mosi Oatunya, the smoke that thunders, a name that comes from the wall of mist and constant roar produced by the falls. The falls formed as the Zambezi River cut through a wide plateau of soft basalt rock, gradually carving a deep, narrow gorge. Unlike most waterfalls, which drop gradually over a slope, Victoria Falls plunges almost entirely straight down into a narrow chasm, which is exactly what generates its enormous constant spray, some of which rises high enough to be seen from over 20 kilometers away. During the dry season, when water levels drop, a natural rock barrier forms at the very edge of the falls, creating a shallow, protected area known as the Devil's Pool. Visitors can actually swim right up to the lip of the falls here, looking straight down over the edge, a heart-stopping experience only possible for a few months each year. Victoria Falls is widely recognized as one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, and a bridge connecting Zambia and Zimbabwe offers one of the most dramatic views of the gorge, along with activities like bungee jumping directly over the Zambezi River below. Victoria Falls doesn't just look powerful, It sounds and feels powerful too. A reminder that sometimes nature's greatest wonders are meant to be experienced, not just seen. Number 5, the Sahara Desert is the largest hot desert on Earth, roughly the size of the entire United States. But just a few thousand years ago, it was a green savanna full of lakes and wildlife. In this video, we explore how the Sahara dried out, what life is still surviving in one of the harshest environments on the planet, and how massive dust storms from the desert affect ecosystems on the other side of the world. 6,000 years ago, this exact spot wasn't sand. It was grassland, rivers, and lakes full of hippos, giraffes, and crocodiles. Today, it's one of the harshest environments on Earth. The Sahara stretches across North Africa, covering roughly 9.2 million square kilometers, an area comparable to the entire United States. It spans parts of 11 countries and is by far the largest hot desert on the planet, though technically Antarctica, a cold desert, is larger overall. Ancient rock art found scattered across the Sahara depicts swimmers, hippos, giraffes, and cattle herding, clear evidence that this region, known to scientists as the African humid period, was once a green, well-watered savanna. Around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, a gradual shift in Earth's orbital tilt altered monsoon patterns, and the region dried out dramatically over the following centuries, transforming into the desert we know today. Today, the Sahara's landscape is far more varied than most people imagine. While sand dunes called ergs get most of the attention, they actually only make up about a quarter of the desert's surface. The rest consists of rocky plateaus, gravel plains, and mountain ranges, including the Ahagar Mountains, which rise dramatically out of the flat terrain. Despite its brutal conditions, with daytime temperatures regularly exceeding 45 degrees Celsius, life still survives here. Species like the fennec fox, with its oversized ears for heat dissipation, and the dromedary camel, capable of surviving days without water, have evolved specifically to endure the Sahara's extremes. Remarkably, Saharan dust doesn't stay in the Sahara. Winds regularly carry hundreds of millions of tons of it across the Atlantic Ocean each year, fertilizing soil in the Amazon rainforest thousands of kilometers away. The Sahara is proof that even the driest place on Earth can still shape life on an entirely different continent. Number 4. It is still growing a few millimeters each year as the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates collide. Thousands of climbers have summited it, but the mountain still claims lives nearly every climbing season. Mount Everest, standing 8,849 meters tall, is the highest mountain above sea level on Earth, and it's still growing every year. In this video, we explore how tectonic collision built Everest, why its summit was once part of an ancient seabed, and what makes the world's tallest mountain one of its most dangerous places to visit. The tallest point on the surface of the Earth is still moving. Right now, in fact, just a few millimeters a year, but it's never actually stopped. Mount Everest sits on the border of Nepal and Tibet, and at 8,849 meters, it's the highest mountain above sea level anywhere on the planet. It's part of the Himalayas, a mountain range formed by one of the most dramatic tectonic collisions in Earth's history. Around 50 million years ago, the Indian tectonic plate began slamming into the Eurasian plate, and because both plates were made of relatively light continental crust, neither one could slide beneath the other. Instead, the crust buckled and folded upward over millions of years, pushing the Himalayas, and Everest along with them, higher and higher. That collision is still happening today, which is why Everest continues to grow by roughly a few millimeters every year. One of the strangest facts about Everest is that its summit is actually made partly of limestone containing marine fossils, remnants of an ancient seabed that existed long before the Indian and Eurasian plates ever collided. That means the highest point on Earth was once, unbelievably, part of the floor of an ocean. Climbing Everest remains one of the most extreme physical challenges on Earth. Above roughly 8,000 meters, climbers enter what's known as the death zone, where oxygen levels are so low, the human body can no longer properly acclimatize, and prolonged exposure becomes life-threatening. Despite modern equipment and experienced guides, the mountain still claims lives nearly every climbing season. Mount Everest is a reminder that even the most permanent-looking features on Earth are still in motion. A mountain built by collision, and still, quietly, being pushed higher every single year. Number 3. The Great Barrier Reef stretches over 2,300 kilometers along the coast of Queensland, Australia, and it's made up of nearly 3,000 individual reefs and hundreds of islands. It's so large that it's genuinely visible from space, and it holds the distinction of being the largest living structure on the entire planet. We explore how coral polyps construct the reef, why it's home to such extraordinary biodiversity, and the serious threats it faces from rising ocean temperatures. This is the largest living structure ever built on Earth, and it wasn't built by humans, or even by large animals. It was built by creatures smaller than a grain of rice, one at a time, for thousands of years. The reef is built almost entirely by coral polyps, tiny soft-bodied marine organisms that secrete calcium carbonate to form a hard protective skeleton around themselves. Individually, each polyp is barely visible. But over generations, as colonies grow and old skeletons accumulate beneath new ones, they slowly build the massive structures that make up the reef, a process that's been ongoing here for roughly 20,000 years. That structure creates an extraordinarily rich ecosystem. The reef is home to an estimated 1,500 species of fish, 400 species of coral, and hundreds of other species, including sea turtles, sharks, and dolphins. It's considered one of the most biologically diverse ecosystems on Earth, all supported by the physical structure that coral polyps have quietly built over thousands of years. But the reef is also fragile. Coral polyps rely on a partnership with tiny algae living inside their tissue, which provide both color and nutrients. When ocean temperatures rise even slightly above normal for extended periods, corals can expel that algae in a stress response known as coral bleaching, turning the coral white and leaving it vulnerable to starvation and disease. In recent years, the reef has experienced several major bleaching events linked to rising sea temperatures. The Great Barrier Reef is proof that some of Earth's biggest structures are built not by force, but by patience. Millions of tiny creatures working together, one skeleton at a time. Number 2, the Amazon produces roughly 20% of the world's oxygen. It is home to an estimated 10% of all known species on Earth. The Amazon spans 9 countries. Its river system is so massive that the Amazon River discharges more water than the next 7 largest rivers combined. We explore how the Amazon River system works, why the rainforest is often called the lungs of the Earth, and how deforestation is threatening one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on the planet. From above, it looks endless, and in a very real sense, it almost is. This single rainforest is home to more species than almost anywhere else combined on Earth. The Amazon rainforest spans roughly 5.5 million square kilometers, stretching across 9 countries in South America, with the majority located within Brazil. It's the largest tropical rainforest on Earth, covering an area larger than the entire European Union. At the heart of the rainforest is the Amazon River, which discharges more water into the ocean than the next 7 largest rivers on Earth combined. It's fed by over 1,000 tributaries, and during the wet season, parts of the river can swell to over 48 kilometers wide, flooding huge sections of surrounding forest. The Amazon's biodiversity is almost impossible to overstate. Scientists estimate the rainforest is home to roughly 10% of all known species on Earth, including around 400 billion individual trees, representing an estimated 16,000 different tree species alone. New species are still being discovered here on a regular basis. The Amazon is often called the lungs of the Earth, producing an estimated 20% of the planet's oxygen through photosynthesis. But its role goes even further. The sheer volume of water the rainforest releases into the atmosphere actually helps generate its own rainfall and influences weather patterns across much of South America. Despite its scale, the Amazon faces serious threats. Large sections have been lost to deforestation, driven by logging, agriculture, and land clearing, raising concerns among scientists that continued loss could push parts of the rainforest past a tipping point, from which it may struggle to recover. The Amazon is proof of just how much life a single ecosystem can hold, and a reminder of how much is still at stake in keeping it standing. Number 1, and here it is, the greatest natural wonder on Earth. The Grand Canyon stretches 446 kilometers long and up to 1.8 kilometers deep, carved by the Colorado River over roughly 6 million years. Its exposed rock layers reveal nearly 2 billion years of Earth's geological history, layer by layer, like flipping through a book written by the planet itself. It's not just a hole in the ground. It's a timeline of Earth carved in stone, nearly 2 billion years of Earth's history, exposed in solid rock, layer by layer. It's located in northern Arizona, and it remains one of the most visited natural landmarks in the United States, drawing nearly 6 million visitors every year. The canyon exists because of the Colorado River, which has been cutting through this landscape for roughly 5 to 6 million years. As the surrounding Colorado Plateau slowly rose due to tectonic activity, the river carved downward at a steady pace, carrying away rock and sediment and gradually deepening the canyon into the massive gorge we see today. What makes the Grand Canyon especially remarkable to geologists is what it reveals. As the river cut downward, it exposed rock layers stacked directly on top of each other, each one representing a different period in Earth's history. At the very bottom of the canyon, exposed rock dates back nearly 2 billion years, meaning a single glance down into the canyon lets you see almost half of Earth's entire geological history at once. The canyon's appearance changes dramatically depending on the time of day, as shifting sunlight interacts differently with each exposed rock layer. Sunrise and sunset are considered the most striking times to visit, when low-angle light deepens the reds and oranges across the canyon walls. The Grand Canyon isn't just a testament to what a river can do given enough time. It's a reminder that beneath our feet, the Earth has been quietly keeping a record of its own history, waiting millions of years for a river to expose it. 25 greatest natural wonders on Earth. Here's my top 5 to visit first. Number 5. Ha Long Bay, Vietnam. Nearly 2,000 limestone islands rising out of emerald water. I'm starting here because it's the most underrated entry point into wonder travel. It's affordable, it's accessible by boat cruise, and within 2 hours of landing, you're floating between limestone islands. The best window is October to April, when skies are clear and humidity is low. October-December gives you the best photography weather, while kayaking is best in summer and autumn when the water is warm and wind is low. Avoid June-August if you can. It's hot, humid, and typhoons occasionally cancel cruises outright. Midweek visits, Tuesday-Thursday, get you lower prices and fewer crowds regardless of season. This is probably the single best-kept secret tip. Getting there from Hanoi, you've got a few options. A shuttle bus, 5 hours, $10.15. A limousine van, 3.5 hours, $15.20, more comfortable with fewer stops. A private car, 3.5 hours, $8100. Or a seaplane, 45 minutes till $250 for stunning aerial views. Most cruise bookings include free hotel pickup from Hanoi's Old Quarter, so check that before booking transport separately. Skip Ha Long Bay proper. Go to Lan Ha Bay or Bai Tu Long Bay instead. This is the biggest insider tip. Many cruises now route into neighboring Lan Ha or Bai Tu Long Bay to avoid crowds. Same karst scenery, way fewer boats. One traveler review actually noted the bay suffers from over-tourism, which has grown relentlessly in recent years, so this reroute matters more than it used to. Book at least a 2-day, 1-night cruise. A 2-day, 1-night cruise is recommended for a balance of immersion and exploration, with activities like visiting Sungsat Cave, kayaking, swimming at secluded beaches, and sunset views. A day trip from Hanoi is doable, but you'll spend more time in transit than actually on the water. Not worth it if you have the time. Practical extras. Bring seasickness meds if you're prone to it. The bay is calm, but the transfer boats can rock. Pack a light jacket, even in warm months. It's noticeably cooler on the water. Squid fishing at night is a signature winter activity, best from November to January if your cruise offers it. Genuinely fun and low-effort book cruises directly through reputable operators or well-reviewed agencies, rather than street-side Hanoi travel shops. Quality varies wildly, and cheap boats sometimes cut corners on safety. Perfect first wonder if you've never done a trip like this before. If you're based in North America, there is zero excuse not to see this one first. Number 4. Grand Canyon, USA. 2 billion years of Earth's history exposed in a single mile-deep, 277-mile-long canyon. Domestic flights, drivable national park infrastructure is excellent, and the scale still breaks your brain even in photos of it everywhere. Important 2026 update. The North Rim had a wildfire, Dragon Bravo fire, that damaged park infrastructure. The North Rim is scheduled to reopen to the public at 6 a.m. on Friday, May 15, 2026, with paved roadways reopening too, but services are limited in 2026, and no overnight lodging is available inside the park on the North Rim. Treat it as a remote, day-use-only stop this year rather than a full-service destination. When to go, the best time is the shoulder season, late March through May or September through November, when the South Rim has mild weather, thinner crowds, and safe conditions for hiking below the rim. September is often the overall winner. Warm days averaging around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 33% fewer visitors than summer, and good rafting conditions on the Colorado. Avoid peak summer if you can. July alone averages 25,800 daily visitors, over 4 times the January low of 5,800. Beat the crowds. Shifting your visit to Tuesday-Thursday typically trims crowd levels compared to weekends. Pine forecast arrive early, before the mid-morning rush, for easier parking. More than just parks. Sunrise tends to be better for fewer crowds and cooler temperatures, while sunset is easier logistically, but busier at popular viewpoints. South Rim versus North Rim. South Rim is open year-round and has all the infrastructure: shuttles, lodges, most viewpoints. North Rim is quieter and cooler, but only accessible roughly mid-May to mid-October, since snow closes the access road the rest of the year. And this year, it's operating on limited services, so confirm current status before you build a trip around it. Winter is underrated, crowds are at their lowest, and lodging rates often drop. But rim temperatures can fall below freezing, trails get icy, and microspikes become essential for any hiking below the rim. The South Rim stays open with reduced services. Good if solitude matters more to you than convenience. Number 3. Victoria Falls, Zambia, Zimbabwe. This is where I'd send anyone chasing pure sensory overload. The sound and the mist you can see from miles away make it unforgettable. The ground literally shakes. It's also a gateway to safari country, so you get 2 wonders in one trip. When to go? It depends entirely on what you want to see. The falls swing dramatically between thundering wall of water and clear photogenic gorge, depending on season. Feb-May, peak flow, roughly 500 million liters minute. This is when the falls are at their most spectacular, especially around April. The trade-off is spray so intense on the Zimbabwe viewing path that it creates constant rainfall, requiring full waterproof gear and protected cameras. Dramatic, but you'll struggle to actually see the water through the mist. June-og, dry season begins. Best photography and manageable crowds, with warm days and lower spray, plus rafting reopens. This is the sweet spot for most first-timers. Sepnov, low water, flow drops to roughly 1/10 of peak by September, revealing the geological structure of the gorge, and the Zambian side can shrink to a trickle. But this is when Devil's Pool and Livingston Island open up on the Zambian side, since lower water levels make them safe again. Which side to stay on? Around 75% of the waterfall is visible from the Zimbabwean side, making it the better pick for first-timers or anyone focused on sightseeing. Zambia gets you closer via Devil's Pool and Livingstone Island, better for thrill seekers. And Zimbabwe has more hotels within walking distance of the falls, while Zambia leans toward luxury lodges along the Zambezi. Good news either way, you can easily cross the border to explore the other side regardless of which one you stay on. If you're combining with safari, the dry season is also when nearby reserves like Chobe and Hwanga are best for wildlife viewing, since scarce water forces animals to congregate at remaining watering holes. May-June threads the needle well for both falls and safari. Practical tips. Heat can be intense in the hotter months. Plan outdoor activities for early morning or late afternoon, carry plenty of water, and wear a hat and sunscreen. Pack a dry bag or waterproof phone case if visiting Feb-May. You will get soaked on the Zimbabwe walking trail. Devil's Pool and whitewater rafting are seasonal, not year-round. These are only possible from roughly August to January, when water levels are low and currents aren't as strong. Year-round activities regardless of water level: helicopter flights, sunset cruises, bungee jumping, and the gorge swing. Grand Canyon bring both currencies or USD cash. Zimbabwe and Zambia visas, border crossings often expect USD. Number 2. Aurora Borealis, Iceland or Norway. Nothing on this list humbles you like watching the sky move. It requires patience and the right season, but the payoff is unlike anything else on Earth. And you can pair it with fjords and glaciers in the same trip. When to go? Iceland's aurora season runs late August-September through mid-April, when nights are dark enough for viewing. The best months are late September through early April. 2 windows tend to outperform deep winter. Activity peaks around the equinoxes in March and September, because Earth's magnetic axis lines up more favorably with the solar wind then. Deepest darkness runs November-January, but many travelers prefer the clearer, more stable weather around late September-October and late February-March. In Norway, Tromsø offers some of the most reliable sightings from late September to early April. Machu Picchu Gateway plus 42026 is a genuinely good year to go. Solar Cycle 25 peaked around 2025, with elevated activity persisting into 2026, meaning increased chances of dramatic auroras. Check the moon phase before you book. This is the tip most people miss. A full moon essentially competes with the aurora for visual impact. The difference between a barely visible green glow and a sky-filling multicolored display often comes down to moon phase timing. Look up the lunar calendar for your travel dates and aim for a new moon if you can. Get away from city lights. Top spots in Iceland include Thingvellir National Park, the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, and Jökulsárlón Glacier Lagoon. In Norway, the general rule is the further north you travel, the better your odds and the longer your viewing window. Tromsø is the easiest base for this best viewing hours. Peak hours run roughly 9 p.m., 2 a.m., with a frequent sweet spot around 10:30 p.m. 1M practical tips. Use a real-time aurora forecast app, KP Index plus cloud cover, rather than just going out blind. This matters more than the calendar date. Aim for at least 3 of 4 nights, so you're not betting everything on one cloudy evening. Wild Wings safaris dress for standing still in the cold for long stretches. Layers matter more than one heavy coat. I've lost more night sky shots to fumbling with camera settings in the dark than I care to admit. Here's what I do now. Bring a tripod and master your manual settings before the sun goes down. Because when you're standing there in total darkness, muscle memory is all you've got. And book flexible dates if you can. Clear skies matter way more than which night you planned for. Here is my number 1, Great Barrier Reef, Australia. My number 1, hands down. It's the only wonder on this entire list that's alive and actively disappearing. Seeing it now isn't just tourism. It's witnessing something that may not look the same in 20 years. That urgency, combined with the sheer scale of it, makes it the trip I'd book first. When to go June through October is consistently the best window for first-time visitors. Dry weather, calm seas, visibility reaching 20-30 meters, no box jellyfish in nearshore areas, and peak whale migration. August and September are the standout months. Shoulder seasons, April, May, or September, October, get you the same great weather with better flight accommodation deals and fewer peak summer crowds. Stinger season is a real factor, not just marketing. Stinger season typically runs October to May, when box jellyfish and irukandji are most active. This is the main reason winter dry season is favored for swimmers. If you do go in the warmer months, stinger risk is significantly lower year-round at outer reef sites 50 kilometers plus offshore from Cairns or Port Douglas, and a full-body lycra stinger suit is standard practice when advised. Cairns versus Port Douglas versus Whitsundays. Cairns is best for serious snorkelers and divers seeking outer ribbon reef sites, dwarf minke whale encounters in June-July, and live-aboard trips. The Whitsundays offer Whitehaven Beach, sailing holidays, and the Ngaro Track. For a first trip, Cairns gives more reef time. For a mix of reef and relaxation, the Whitsundays wins. Port Douglas sits geographically between the two and is a quieter, more laid-back base with easy access to both reef and rainforest. Go for outer reef. Not just the first stop, look for tours that go to the outer reef for better visibility and marine life, and avoid boats that pack too many people on. A smaller group means a more personalized experience. Budget $150, 300 plus AUD per person for a full-day trip depending on inclusions. For fewer crowds entirely, the Southern Great Barrier Reef, Lady Elliot Island or Heron Island, offers incredible diving and snorkeling right off the shore, with fewer crowds and a more intimate feel. Plus year-round chances to spot manta rays and turtles. Practical extras. Consider motion sickness medication if you're prone to it. The open ocean can get choppy. The Sybarite Book. Outer Reef Day tours in advance during peak season, June-October. Boats sell out. Reef-safe sunscreen is often required and genuinely matters for coral health. Bring your own rather than relying on what's sold at the marina. A scenic flight or helicopter tour is worth it at least once. It gives an unparalleled bird's eye view of the reef's intricate patterns and vastness that you can't get from the water. That's my ranking. But travel is personal, so drop your top 5 in the comments. I want to see how different everyone's list is. If this gave you a travel bucket list refresh, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.